Alright, so I'm going to take y'all on another exploratory prototype inventing how-to journey as I try and build a dispenser slash spooler for 17 gauge electric fence wire that will just take a standard steel spool like this Beckert or like the Red Brand type that you can pick up from Tractor Supply. This is not intended for, heavy intensity agricultural use. This is just for, residential use. If you've got to run, a couple miles of wire and you don't want to have to invest in all the hardware and everything to move around, a like 70-pound spool of wire, and you're just going to pick up, some like 30-pound, like half-mile spools and just run those. This is what that's for, because I got a lot of electric fence I got to run in my future. Well, relatively, about maybe a mile and a half. I just wired up that garden over there. I just put up a deer fence. It's not electrified. I just did it to keep the deer out. And that was an endeavor. I had to get a 2-foot chunk of 4x6, drive a 12-inch nail through it, throw that in a wheelbarrow, drop a 70-pound sandbag on it, plop that on it, and run that around and spin that around, have a second person there to clamp it off with a vice grip and all this other shit just to be able to run it. And that was a pain in the ass. And I would much rather have a nice, handy, handheld spool like this that I can run all the wire off of and have a handle off the side, so if I want to reel it back up, I can. And also have some kind of clamp on it so that when I'm done and ready to cut it, I can lock the wire and the spool in place so it doesn't spray everywhere whenever I cut it, and be able to set it down, cut it, do everything, come back up, pull out some wire, relock it, hook it up, and then carry on. So that's what I'm going to try and build here today. No idea if it's going to work. I'll at least be able to get a spool going. I don't know about the lock thing. That's going to take a little bit more thinking on, and I got to get some more materials for that. But just real quick, I'm just going to go over the stuff that I've got right now. And then when we get to the clamp, we'll figure that out, and future me will probably throw something here up on the screen showing you the final product, as well as any other stuff you're going to have to buy. But at the moment, and also this will work for half-mile spools as well as quarter-mile spools. The quarter miles are about 4 inches tall, the half miles are about 7 inches tall. So yeah, this will work for both of them. It's not going to be dependent on the length of the spool. Clamp might be a little bit funny, but we'll sort it out. Anywho, stuff you're going to need is, of course, a spool of wire. You're going to have a spool of wire because that has the spool in it. If you don't have a spool of wire and you just have a bunch of wire already on a fence you need to get off, you can just buy a spooler, just an empty spooler for collecting used wire. Those are like $50. About 100 different manufacturers make them. Just go out and grab one. It's not worth the effort. This here's like $30 in material. That's like $40 worth of wire. Probably going to end up having to spend probably close to $50 in materials to build this. But yeah, you got to have one of these prefab metal spools just to use as your base. Then on top of that, you're going to need 6 foot of either 1 inch and 1/8, or what I have here, 1 inch and 12 gauge, because they were out of 1/8, and this honestly will probably be a lot better. It's not too much different from 1/8, but it should bend a lot better. It seems to be a lot milder steel than the 1/8 inch stock I was going to buy. Also costs like 25% less. But anywho, you're going to need 6 foot of this. I've got 2 8-foot pieces so that I have some slop, because it's tight on 6 foot. But doing the 8 foot gives me at least a couple more attempts if I fuck something up. Then on top of that, you're going to need about 2 foot of 3/8 round rod or threaded rod, and 2 foot of 1/4 inch threaded rod, 2 approximately 1.5 inch threaded full length 3/8 hex cap screws, about 15 3/8 nuts, about I think 6 1/4 inch nuts. I was just out of nuts, so I just bought bulk. It was cheaper that way. And about 12 3/8 washers, and they only had 1 bag left, and someone had already stolen 10 out of it. So I just jammed those in there, and that made up the price difference. Don't tell anybody. Shh, don't tell the government. But anywho, that's all you're going to need. And this does not involve any welding, but it does involve some machine work, some filing, some fitting. A lot of drill work, also bending may involve. I'm going to use an angle grinder. A lot of stuff you can use a hacksaw or reciprocating saw if you got that, but the angle grinder is just a lot nicer. I've been using the death wheel a lot lately, and I don't know why I haven't been doing that my entire life, but anywho, it's not. You know, there is some hand fitting involved, but it's not super complicated to do. And I'm saying all of this without having built it yet. I may be cursing myself, or it may be a lot easier at the end of this. We'll see. But these are all the materials you're going to need on the front end. I'm going to start work on bending the frame of this thing, because just to give you a rough framework, if I haven't already put, you know, the final product right here on screen for you to see, we're basically building a frame all the way around on this that's going to be hinged in the middle, and you can pivot it up unless that ends up not working. Then it will just be locked in place, and it'll have a handle on one side, and then over here it'll have a clamp mounted that comes down, pinches on this, and then also sandwiches the wire against the frame. And hopefully that will work and not be a nightmare. I'll sort it out. If nothing else, I'll just zip tie a vice grip to it that you can just clamp onto it. Just go buy me like a $3 pair of $3 mini vice grips or something. That might be an alternative, but it would be a pain in the ass. And then, in addition to that, there will be a handle sticking out here that freely rotates. The handle freely rotates on that, and then the handle will be clamped to this. And then the spool, you'll have the frame all the way around this. The frame will pivot up like that. There will be a central spindle in here that you can slide the spool off of, slide the new spool on, and there will be a plate over here that's bolted on, and you just back the center nut out and then take the outside bolts out, which will run through this, pull all this out, put it back on, stick the plate back on, put the two nuts on, tighten this nut down, and then this will be locked to the spool. And it should be, hopefully, fairly easy, with only like, I think, 3 parts that fall off of it when you're not using it. We'll see, and I'll probably need to work out some kind of clamp over here to hold this down when it's pivoting. And yeah, I'm really concerned about the fitment of the hinges and whether or not that will be a pain or not. We shall see. And yeah, still got a lot of stuff to work out, but that's where my mind is at, and it's going to be a lot more work than it's worth. But you know how it is. You get an idea in your head, and you sketch it all out on paper 6 times, and you have everything figured out to like the 1/8 of an inch what it's all going to have to be. And at that point, even if it's a stupid idea and it's going to cost you $100, you still got to do it just to prove that you can. And that's kind of where I'm at, but I'm hoping it's not going to cost me more than $50, so we'll see. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to bend out the 2 frame pieces, and then I'll get the rough frame and center section, all that stuff assembled, because that is pretty straightforward. It's easy to fit and all that stuff. And I've been thinking a little bit harder about like the clamp, as well as I also realized I had to make a pivoting lock for the far side of it so it can swing out. So I've got to do a little bit more fitment on that stuff, but I need to get the whole frame and everything assembled first. So we're going to work on that just so I can really start fleshing it out and getting precise measurements and all that stuff. And I've got like an hour before I have to go to like an all-day meeting for work, so I'm going to use that time wisely by dicking around out here instead of preparing. And what I have done already is I have scribed out the marks for the first chunk of frame, and you're going to need 2 21-inch sections based on my current plans. And you're going to want, it may need to be a little bit less slightly. It might be a bit overkill to make it 21. May only need to be 19 or 18. But we're going 21 just so that we have slop and can trim everything as needed. But what we're doing at the moment, I've marked out 6 inches, 15 inches, and then again over here I just kind of roughly marked out 21. We're not going to cut it yet because it's a lot easier to bend steel when you have the full big chunk hanging out the end of it. That's kind of overkill, but just might as well. Plus, the bends are not going to be hyper precise because I'm just eyeballing this. I am going to hit it with some MAP gas and wear some leather gloves, just because I know steel likes to bend further out than you think. So the hotter I get this down here, also you want to, have this at least the width of the steel away from the bend. Otherwise, it will bend at this line, and you'll end up at least the width of the steel out. I probably need to pull this out a little bit more, but again, this 6-inch section out here is not a critical length. It'll be this 9-inch section in here that's more critical. So I'm going to get this to bend. This will be my test bend. That'll tell me how it wants to bend under heat at this angle, how much length it adds to it, and then from that I can judge the distance I need to make this for the rest of the bends. And then after we get this first one bent, we'll cut it off, and then we'll measure and do everything for the next section. Because you don't want to measure it all out at once, because you're going to cut 1/8 of an inch at least off whenever you split it, so it won't all be precise. So anyway, you know how curves work. All right, well there that guy is bent. Oh man, working with 12 gauge steel so much easier than that 1/8 inch I've been using for forever. Oh Lord, but that is all bent up. It is very flat, very true. MAP gas is your friend. I've been using propane my whole life. It's cheap, but and it's lower cost of investment, but oh good Lord, does that MAP gas work so much better, especially when you have a solid steel vise, especially if you've got a big honking steel vise. It's actually able to just give it 5 seconds, heats the whole thing up. Just start putting leverage on it. You also have to lift up as you bend it, because the steel naturally wants to sag. I prefer to bend things vertically when possible, but I just don't have the room on this table to bend anything more than about 5 inches long. Anything more than that hits table and then doesn't bend right. I have to put it on an angle, it gets squirrely. Better just do it outside. But yeah, bent up just fine, nice and true, perfect 90-degree angles, measured it, it's exactly the same. And I just eyeballed that, so that's nice. So I am going to measure this out, and then you want to measure from the corners, not the ends. So I'm going to measure this out and then cut both of these the same length. And then we will do the same again on this side. Worked out just fine. The distance I had it about 1/8 of an inch out, the width of the steel plus a bit. That worked perfectly. And yeah, we'll cut that, bend the other one, and then we might do some drilling to fit the two together. We shall see. All right, well, those are bent up and cut, and they came out really nice. Thank you, MAP gas. So just a skosh off over here, but I can literally, I actually introduced that because I bent this out thinking it was bent and it wasn't. And if I just go like that, come on now, there we are, perfect, fully lined up. Just to pretend it's mint. But anywho, those are done. So now I am going to fit these together, and I don't know if y'all can comprehend my harebrained ideas yet, but I believe what it's going to be is like this. I'm going to overlap them like that, kind of alternating. We're going to drill a hole through this, and a hole through this, and then back here we are going to put a handle on here, which will have a little thing sticking out the bottom, which will grab onto this and prevent the handle from rotating on this side over here. But then this one will be able to freely move past the handle, and then that'll give us strength on this end. And then on this end, this is where the clamp is potentially going to be mounted. I may need to mount it over here, maybe, we'll see. I got to work into it. Yeah, but this will have another bolt going through here, and these will have just enough tension on them to hold it mostly in place, but still enough that you can rotate it. I think I'm probably going to need to use, I'm going to have to do something fancy with some lock nuts, but we'll work it out, especially if I have a pivoting thing over here. This one, not so much, but that one definitely. I'll get into that when I get into that. But for the time being, I'm going to measure this out, and I'm going to drill a hole through here and a hole through here. And the internal diameter I'm shooting for in here is, I think 12 inches? Something along that line? No, 11 inches? Something like that. So yeah, and that'll give us, exactly 1 inch of overlap right there. Just enough to run a 3/8 through there and still have plenty of meat. I'm going to pull up my diagrams and make sure I am doing that right, and then I will drill both of those, put in those bolts. Well, actually, before I do that, I also need to drill a 3/8 hole here and a 3/8 hole here. And then on this end, I'm going to wallow it out on the bottom. I'm going to make it into a horseshoe like that. So we'll just drill a 3/8, and then we'll take the death wheel and we will just zip out both sides. And both of these may need to get expanded out to 1/2 inch, or at least 1/2 inch if I decide to use bushing, 7/16 if I decide not to. That'll give us enough free ball. I would like to put some bushings on there, but I have to find something that's the right diameter, and just buying bushings straight off the shelf, they're like $1 something a piece, and I ain't spending that. But anywho, I digress. This will just be a straight hole. This will be a sort of horseshoe. But for the time being, I'm just going to drill 3/8 through both of them and then wallow it out a little bit so I can fit the 3/8 thread rod through. And then we'll do all the fancy stuff over there at a later date. But I'm going to get all this fitted together, and then I will throw the spool in there and mock it up somewhat. And yeah, get something here that depicts what I want to do. And also, while I'm in that process, I might as well bend up or cut up the rest of the steel. Well, most of it. I was left with a 6-inch piece at the end of it, which is nice. However, I need a 4-inch piece, a 2-inch piece, a 2-inch piece, a 5-inch piece, and a 7-inch piece. So I'm going to have to cut that one way, shape, or form. So I'm just going to say that's the 5-inch piece, and we're just going to leave it as is for now in case I need more steel. That'll be the handle crank arm. And then I am going to use the 7-inch piece to make the carry handle, and then the 2-inch pieces will be over here. So I think I'm going to go bend up the handle, and I'm going to lose a little bit of meat on that. I think I'm going to go for about, I think I'm going to cut that to 8 inches and then trim it to fit, because I'm going to have to bend it 90 degrees on either end, and I want meat to do that. So I think I'm going to leave 5 inches on one side, bend that all the way over, then go over another 6 inches, and then bend that side up, and then maybe 7 inches. Bend that up, cut it a little long. Might make it 9 inches. I don't know. I'll tell you when I get it done. And then I will cut the 2-inch pieces off of the front end of that, and then that'll give me the little butt ends for here. And then I'll need a 4-inch piece which is something I just thought of this morning, to put a lock right here, like a little swing lock gate like that, so that I can have that cut walled out of there, and then, undo this lock, swing it down like that, lift the whole thing up, pull the thing out. Then when I put it back down, have something that comes up and then bolts to the side over there that holds everything in place. So yeah, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to do that. Alright, so real quick before I start drilling, I've got everything cut. I've still got 31 inches left. And this, real quick, is going to be my layout. Bam. So it's going to be, this is going to be the handle. It's going to be vertical, like this. And then these are going to be the clamps on either side of the spool. I may need to recut these a bit longer. I was shooting for nominally 2 inches to begin with, but I realized 2.5 would probably be better. And so I tried to, but I didn't have enough material, so I tried to cut them to 2 1/4, and I messed up a cut, so I had to trim one. And anyway, they're 2 inches now, nominally. And this will be the handle. This still needs to be trimmed down because I want it to not extend past this guy, or I may want it to. I don't know. It depends on my clearances. It may be optimal to keep it 6 inches and make it clear so that potentially I can run it closer to this and the nut clears. We'll see. I'll leave that for now. And then this, I said was going to be 4. I cut it to 5 because I realized I kind of want to make like a flip up, like a handle on it, have some meat on it, some purchase. So I think what I'm going to do is leave this inch over here, and then I will trim this in about halfway and then heat the piss out of it and then roll over that corner so I have a little lip so that you can grab it and push it down once you loosen it. So good thing I thought about that before I cut it. And yeah, that's the layout. Now I'm going to start drilling, but I only got about 30 minutes. Don't know how far I'll get, but I'm definitely going to do these and these first, and then we'll probably work on, I guess we'll do this might as well. Alright, well, I managed to get all of this drilled out to 1/4 inch, and I drilled this out to 3/8, but my 3/8 bit's a little worn out. I think it's high time I buy a bit sharpener, as well as a, nice good drill bit set that I only use for, things that aren't, busted and broken where I might break a bit. But anywho, I had to clean all this stuff and get up out of here in 2 minutes ago. Alright, well, I think I've got everything drilled out and tapped, and I think it's high time that I can finally start putting this thing together and cutting my threaded rod. So, as you can see with this guy, I drilled out every hole to 3/8 on all of this, and then on this one, I took the death wheel and I just kind of slotted out the bottom half, and then I drilled 1/4 inch holes across from each other, mirrored to that guy. And then I threaded those, or I drilled those to 3/16, excuse me, and then I threaded them for 1/4 course. And then these I drilled out to just a hair over 1/4 inch, like 9/32 or something like that. I think that's the drill bit I had. I don't know, it doesn't have a marking on it. But anywho, just slightly over 1/4, then did the same 3/8, and I cut that out. And I also bent the corner over like yonder, and I need to sand that down because it is razor sharp. And that will match up perfectly like so. And then the 1/4 inch will be threaded into here, and if those 1/4 inch threads don't work out, I'll just put nuts on the outside. And then that'll lock that in place, and then you just back that one out and loosen that, pivot that down, swing this up. You can pull the spool out so long as all the nuts and stuff clear. And I think I still need to do some work on this guy, I think. Yeah. I think I need to do this same sort of dealio, that notch on this guy as well. We'll see about that in a second. I'm going to do like an angled notch like this rather than straight down. I still need to do that, so I'll do that off camera. Then this is the handle. I think I still need to trim 1 inch off the end of that, but these are drilled out to, what was it, the 9/32, and then threaded for 3/8 course. This is the carry handle. That's just drilled out 3/8 down there. And this one, the opposite for that, I drilled that out to 9/16 and 3/16 and 3/16. Threaded these for 1/4 inch course and that for 3/8 course. And let me finish doing the last little bit of metal work I got to do, cutting that guy out and trimming that. And then I will show you exactly what I need to do to assemble all this and get it all mocked up. Alright, well, I went and cleaned up all the holes and everything, filed off all the metal shavings and whatnot, and I just went ahead and threw it all together and got it assembled. So this is what I'm going for here. Now, this is not the final product. I am going to take this dowel and I'm going to add a handle here and a handle here. This is also going to get trimmed up to about that length. But for the most part, that's all of it. I still need to work on a clamp thing, and we'll think on that for a minute, but basically you're going to be able to hold it like this, dangle it down like that, and just run the thing off if you need to run wire. And then if you want to reel it up, you just crank the handle like that, and that'll be good to go. If you want to change the spool, you just take this nut out, and then this bottom bar will pivot down, this will pivot up like that, and then you can back these two nuts off, back these two off just a little bit, run all of these off all the way. These need to be trimmed down about another inch. I just cut everything long so I didn't have any, I'd rather have it too long to start out with than too short. So these need to be shortened down to about here. Back these out, run both of these nuts off, just throw them in your pocket or something. And then this guy is cut like that, and it'll pop out. It'll slide up and out and over and all of that stuff. You just have to back these far enough out that you can get it up and out. Then you can just slide a new spool on, put all that back into place, put this down, flap this up, clamp that down, ready to go. And I'll show you all that once I have the thing final and assembled. But I'm just out of time tonight. I can't even test fit that because I've got to run. Gnats are out pretty bad, getting dark, I'm hungry. So anywho, we'll pick this up day after tomorrow probably. Alright, well, I went to mock fit everything together, and we have encountered a fundamental issue with my idea, which I had not considered. The end caps, these press fit nubbins, they don't align them from the factory. So not a major thing, but kind of, defeats the whole purpose of having an easily, interchangeable spool. So now I have to drill 1/4 inch holes on one of these sides for both of these just to be able to get it to fit on there, which is very disappointing. But again, with all the, metal fabrication work we're doing, not a big deal, but kind of fundamentally defeats the purpose, which is sucks. It just sucks. But anywho, we shall carry on. Okay, so now that minor crisis has been averted, as you can see, it seems to work. Mostly, kinda, for the most part. I was just cranking it. It's a little bit stiffer than I like, but the thing also does weigh like 40 pounds. Anywho, that is done. Now I just need to fit handles on here, do a little bit more, finish work, take off corners and stuff like that. Or I probably won't because I'm lazy. But that is, for the most part, structurally good to go. Think I might pull this spool off and test the small spool just to see what the balance is like. I may need to add a second handle point or something over here, so if you're using a small spool you can do that. But The real beauty of this is that you use the big spools because they are heavy and unwieldy. Small spools, you can just stick a big nail in them and run them around and just, you know, they're not as big a pain in the ass, the big spools. This is really designed for these big boys. So anywho, I'm going to continue up those efforts here in the future, but not today, because today is beer day. Alrighty, well, here she is in her almost final, guys. Just cut I think this is a 5-inch piece of a 1 1/4-inch dowel, I think. And then this is a 4.5-inch piece that I just cut right down the middle with a reciprocating saw and then chiseled flat. Then I just drilled a hole clear through the metal, 1 inch down and 3 inches down, then held the wood up to it, drilled through the wood, and then held the other piece of wood up through it, drilled through that. Then I just ran some, I think like 10 and 32 countersunk screws in, and then just put some nuts on the back end. I really should probably trim those bolts back about 1/4 inch and then countersink both the nuts and this, but I'm lazy, and it's not that. It only cuts my hand a little bit. Still have to sand on this and get this all right, but for just a rough mock-up that I don't care about, that's pretty nice. With this guy, I drilled a 1/4-inch hole as far in as I could with the drill, and then the other side as far in as I could, and then made sure they were roughly lined up, and then drilled in a 1/2 inch and then a 1/2 inch from both sides, and then just stuck it on here and then counter torqued nuts on either side, so this freely rotates on the shaft. And can't really do it one-handed, but it rotates all nice and free like now. The torque I had on it before was just these up here, so I may have to make some kind of lock for those, some kind of sliding lock that I could have over here and slide over these just to hold those hinges in place, but at the moment, don't really care. It's not that big a deal, but that is, for the most part, constructed. Now, all I have to do is figure out some kind of something for a lock here, and with this all bent to hell, I don't know if clamping onto this is going to work, but my basic thought was to take a piece of bar, have it come out like this, dog leg down, and then over like that, and then normally it'll just fold over like over here. Then when I want to use it, I just swing it over like this, have a little bit of a handle on it, comes down, it has a V-notch like that slams in like this, crimps down onto this metal, holds that in place, and then I can also have an adjustable plate right here that comes down and then pinches this wire right here and just kind of bends the wire over, and then the wire will be clamped to this bar and the roll will be clamped here, so then when you cut the wire doesn't go down on the spool, and the spool doesn't just like spin with the wire, and that should be good. I think it's actually a lot more important that I get the wire crimped, because as you see, this can't really go anywhere if you have it set on the ground and the handle's there. So I'm gonna think on that. Not gonna work on it today, but I'll work on it another day. It's really windy today, and it's like already 5 o'clock, so I gotta fix these loppers first, but that'll be next, probably tomorrow. Alright, so this is the second to last step, the penultimate step. We are going to try and make a clamp that will clamp onto both the spool and the wire. Pretty confident I can make something that'll clamp the spool. It's going to take a lot of finesse work to try and get something that'll clamp the wire in addition to doing the spool, but I have some ideas and we'll work through them here. My current thought is, if I can get this guy to lock for me, is to go 4 inches out and then 3 inches in, and then another 4 inches out, so that'll be an 11-inch piece, and then right there, kind of at the 2-inch mark, because also remember it's going to be like this when it's done. So right about there at 2-inch mark, we're going to cut a V in the side of the steel, so that when it comes down, it smacks onto this metal, and then that V tapers down. Hope if I can, work it out, I'll drill like a 1/8 inch hole, maybe slightly bigger, 1/8 inch, and I'll wallow it out in there, and then a V will come down into that, just slightly smaller than it, so that when it comes down, it pops over this lip right here and holds it. Actually, honestly, that might not, well, I only get one shot at this. Actually, technically two, the way I'm setting this up. But it'll hook onto this, clip it, or I could just do a shallow V and put leave it rough, leave some serrations on it so it comes down and just bites into this and compresses that. But it would be better to kind of get it to clamp if possible. I might plastisol it or something. We shall see. Get it to clamp onto this so that this guy can't roll. Theoretically, I could also just make like a lock for this. That is another possibility. I could just have a big zip tie or something. I don't know. Bungee cord or something like that. But I would like to have a lock because then it will also allow me to hopefully make a little guillotine that kind of kicks out like this with a little clip on it that comes down, pinches the wire, and then clips underneath over here. Don't know how well that clip idea will work. Might have to fit some spring steel or something. We'll see. Gotta do a lot more noodling on that, but I at least want to get this guy done today. So I'm going to take this, mark it out at 4, and then again at 3, and then again at 11, bend it at the 4, bend it at the 3, and then cut it at the 11, and that should give me a nice piece. And then I will drill ½ inch in over here. We will drill a 3/8 hole so that it fits on this, same as these. And then once I get all of that set up and lined up, we will mark it, cut it, and hope for the best. If we can get that to work, then we can transition to working over to this. And then once we get that to work, then I can go through and do all the final touches and clean it all up. And then I will have a final report for y'all on all the different dimensions and parts and everything you need. Like originally I wanted to do brass rivets in here, but I just didn't have any brass rivets and I had the motivation, so that's why we went with that. I still need to countersink those. I still need to polish or sand the whole handle and everything to make it not so rough. Same goes with these over here. I think all these places where I've double nutted 3/8, I need to go back and buy nylock washers and replace those, or nylock nuts and replace those. Like a nylock and one of those if possible, because these guys under load are backing out and spinning on the shaft, which I was not anticipating. I guess that's the problem with using these kind of sloppy coarse threads on all thread. So yeah, I might need to do something about these guys, because when this is under load, if I flex this up like that, everything runs smoothly, but it slowly flexes down like that and puts tension on the rod, which then causes things to bind up, which then causes that to back out. If you got too much load on it and you twist that, it'll back the screw off, because I'm rotating with the direction of the threads instead of against it. And yeah, various things like that. I need to slot this guy right here actually, so that you can just loosen this nut and then push this down without having to do anything else. You know, little minor things like that. But first, let's get a clamp working. Alright, well, that guy has been bent, 3/8 hole drilled in the bottom, and I have mocked it up. I put it on the inside. Still don't know if that's going to be ideal or not. Also, this ended up not being the length I wanted. Probably should have made this 4.5 inches. I went with 4. I just felt, you know, that would make it a lot easier to make 4/3/4. But it's kind of biting me now because I don't really have a good spot over here. So I think I may eschew the plate idea for the most part. Well, I guess I could make a little triangle doohickey like that. That would lock it in. Don't really know. Maybe better just to make like a clip or something that can just like swing over like that. Don't know. But anywho, we'll focus on the spool lock at the moment. I have determined that the spool itself, this rim, is just a hair over 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to take an 1/8 inch bit and drill smack dab in the center right above it, halfway into the block. And then that'll give us an end point that'll lock into there with a nice positive click, hopefully. We can wallow it out if we need it to. Then I'm going to take a fine blade on a hacksaw, and I'm going to cut this path in here. And then I am going to cut bevels here on like the first third, and then the rest of this slot is going to just very slowly narrow to the 1/8 inch hole. And I want this little spot right here to be ever so slightly thinner so that it clips over the lip, and hopefully that should work like a charm. So I'm going to disassemble this, and I'm going to very slowly hand fit this and hope and pray that it works. Alright, well that's fit, and it works pretty well. There's not really a good way to explain what I did here. You're just going to have to hand fit it, but drilled an 1/8 inch hole, and then just basically cut a line leading to it with the angle grinder, and then cut that out to about a 45-degree angle, like 20 on either side with the hacksaw, polished it with the angle grinder, and then just went in there and walled out the drill bit to be just slightly larger, and then just ever so slightly took material off until it clipped nice and snug like on there. However, we do have some fitment issues. Chiefly, was not anticipating that. Probably needed to do like a slightly more curved angle in there. There's nothing I can do to change the geometry now because this is very dependent on where it is. So I think and also this is like a half-used roll, so that is kind of a major screw up on my part. So yeah, other than like bending this out and doing a bunch of really complicated stuff that's going to mess it up, I think instead I am just going to cut half the material off right here, call it a day. It doesn't need to be that strong, and hopefully that should work. But yeah, kind of disappointing. However, it works at the moment. But yeah, definitely this probably needed to be 2 angles right here to clear that. I did not anticipate that until I had it fit. Could have also made this a little bit shorter and clipped further out here. There's no reason I needed to clip that far in. So if you're doing this, you may want to set this to like, well, I don't think it really will make that much difference to put it 2 inches in or 2.5, something like that. That might have made a difference. I could also try putting it on the outside, now that I think about it. I don't think that will interfere with anything else. It was kind of just an arbitrary choice on my part. Well, also for this clip guy over here, but then that would allow me to put the plate on the inside, and then I could clip onto this. So I will, also, this does fold up and out of the way, like that, and so it's completely out of the way when you're running it. But I'm going to try fitting that on the inside, and also just cutting this corner off, taking about 1/3 of the material out right here, and just see if that improves fitment at all. Okie dokie, well that's been done, and that actually helps substantially, and I think maybe my clearance is actually better over here. I don't clip that edge anymore, so I think that was the correct move. So there we go, that's all folded out of the way, and you just swing it on over and just give it a nice firm, come on now, whack. Anywho, still some fitment issues, but much better than what it was. This probably needs to be bent in just a little bit, and this might need just a skosh more taken out of it, but that's pretty close. So I think we're going to move on to figuring out something for a clamp. I was planning to do like a kind of guillotine or something, but now seeing how little room I have in there, it may actually behoove me to make like a flag or something that I can then swing over and have just enough tension on it that it clamps down onto this. Thinking if I get a piece, some of the steel that's remaining, and cut it with a little V in it, or probably I need something a lot smaller actually. I think maybe I can get something out here with a nut on it that you can just sort of curve over like this that'll pinch onto that, and it has just enough spring tension that maybe I can have like a clip over here or something, maybe. I don't know, I'm still thinking into it right now, but if I could get like a U-shaped piece of metal that could swing over like this and clip like that and has enough that I could flick it back off, then that would probably work. But fitting that is going to be a real pain in the neck. So yeah, I'm gonna go dig around the scrap pile and see if I can find something. I think it's too much work to use the bar stock that I have to try and make something out of it. Maybe it's not, I don't know, I'll look into it. Okay, so after some fiddling and fooling, this is what I've come up with. I cut a 4-inch piece of steel out, drilled an 1/8 inch hole straight through the center of it, and then I marked 1/2 inch in, 1/2 inch down from the corner bend on this, drilled an 1/8 inch hole through it, and then I wallowed this outer one, or I drilled this outer one out to 3/16 and then walled it out so that I could then thread and tap this in here for 10 and 32. And then I ran just a short little machine screw, 10 and 32 through there, threaded it in here, and then tighten it down so that it's fairly stiff. And then that, oh, and also I cut down roughly 3/4 of an inch down here, about a 1/4 inch in from the end of it, and then I cut at about a 30-degree angle in down to that point, and I drilled the center in there with a 1/8 inch just so I had a point of reference that I could cut with the angle grinder and didn't accidentally walk off. And then I have taken that and I have kind of filed it down to just a slight angle, about a 45-degree angle, and I did the same over here where it strikes on the main locking arm with the angle grinder, so that it comes down to just a sharp little wedge like this. And then I'm hoping that with enough torque that will bend the wire. It's not perfect yet. I would like to have some kind of spring latch right up here that would clip onto this and give me a really positive lock, but I don't think that's actually going to help me at all with securing the wire. So I think the plan is I'm just going to bend the wire when I'm using this. So this will be stored like that, out of the way, and then you swing this guy over, and again I need to work on the screw tension down there, so forgive how stiff it is. Spin this over here, clip onto there, and then the wire will be forced by this rotating action to be pushed over here into this area, and then with this you spin it down and that will grab the wire, pull it up into this little notch right in here, slide it over, and then you go like that, and it should bend the wire down around this bar and then up around this bar, and then you pull that in, and then since you have the wire like that, you bend it up like that, take it down, clip it, or I guess you could bend it up, and if you have wire cutters in your hand then you clip it, and then there will be a sort of 3-point geometry like that that will keep the wire from moving. And then you just do your business, come back over here, set this on the ground, grab the wire, unlock it, pull it out some to do whatever you need to do, come back over, lock it down, and you're ready to go again. And I think I need to test this thing out real quick and see if it works at all. And then we will come back in and we will fix everything up and fine tune it, and then I will give you the final details on everything I did. But I think this is going to be pretty much the final incarnation of this thing. Kind of a lot more complicated than I intended it to be, but I think it will work quite nicely, or it will fail horribly. Jesus, I need to get some nylock nuts so I can properly set tension. Good lord, that self-tightened. But anywho, I'm going to undo that, and I think I'm going to go run some over there and see if I can just like run a line. I don't want to run a lot because I don't want to waste any wire, but see if I can run like maybe 10 or 20 feet out of there and then maybe spool it back up and see how that works. We shall see. Alright, well here she is. I unspooled the wire. It's actually working really well. It bends it over real nice like. So yeah, it is working so far. I still need to test it, but at least in principle, here in a closed vacuum, it seems to be working. I did think of one other thing I need to add. Right in here, I need to add like probably just a big ass magnet, or maybe like a little loop, like a hose clamp or something, bent over to just the right shape with a big magnet in it, so that I can take a set of needle nose pliers and just kind of have it drop down in like that, and then get stuck in place with a magnet, so I can walk around with a pair of needle nose pliers in the spooler, and I don't have to keep it up here in my shirt pocket or something like that. Because if you keep things in your shirt pocket, 9 times out of 10 you bend over to do something with wire and bloop, real pain in the neck. Plus that frees up you having to hold it in your other hand, so you can just swing on over, stick it in there, run the spool, get it to where you need it, like, you know, balance that on your knee, reach over, grab it. So I think that's a really good addition. I'm going to do that, but first I'm going to hook this guy up to probably up here just at waist height, give it the best chance possible, just do a couple wraps like that, and then I'm going to unspool it down there and then lock it all over, see how it works, holding everything, set it down on the ground, move it over, you know, with tension, everything off of it, see whether it works or if it explodes spectacularly, and then I think I'm going to try and spool it back up, and we'll see if it works or not. Well, that actually worked really well. The only thing I was not anticipating is how annoying that handle is, because you kind of have to hold it and it wants to go like this, and it just kind of slaps you a whole bunch, and if you let go of it, then the wire will kind of unspool underneath its own spring tension. So it's kind of, yeah, I might add something over here, just like a little knob or something, like just a doorknob that is keyed onto that or something, or maybe a big wing nut. something like, I think actually a smooth round, like kind of like drawer knob or something like that over here, just so I can kind of use it like a handbrake, like use my hand like a clutch, and just kind of hold onto it and just kind of slow its descent like that. And then when I'm done like that, then switch over, run the clamp, switch the other handle, that sort of thing. So that's 2 new additions. Also, definitely need to add the wire cutter holder, because that fell right out as soon as I went to do that, just like I said it would. And yeah, so it holds tension just fine. No issues there. Yep, so that is working well for the time being, at least. Need to work on that handle because my hand already hurts, and it just dug a small hole into it on those sharp corners up there. So that's, I knew about that. I just need to get to it. And yeah, so that is working. And now I think I'm going to try and spool this back up and see how well it works. All right, so I did just a Scotia piddlin'. And as you can see, I have a pretty slick needle nose plier holder now. I actually just bought a flashlight last week. Well, a replacement for the exact same one I had. And it came with this handy dandy holder. And it ends up being the exact perfect size for a pair of needle nose pliers. So that worked out beautifully, like that. That should work out just fine. And I just test fit the little roll on there. And other than the balance being funny, it works perfectly. Clamp still works, so that's nice. But the reason why I pulled that one off is because I'm disassembling this, because I just went and looked and I actually had like just exactly enough lock nuts. So I think I'm going to disassemble the center shaft. Well, I'm going to have to do both of these over here. I don't think I'm going to do anything with the handle, because it's only the stuff that has a load on it. Like, honestly, these guys can stay. So this is the final shape, and the last couple of things I did were I pulled the handle off and I sanded all that down to be all smooth like, countersunk these, countersunk those, trimmed them to fit, beveled this edge up here, polished it, so this is all nice and not cut my hand open now. I went through and put nylock washers everywhere I could here on the main shaft. I ended up using 2 swage lock nuts down here. Counter torqued those together because those ended up being the exact same spacing as 2 regular nuts, so that didn't interfere with this. Honestly, I probably need to replace both of those with just 1 nylock nut, because it looks like this guy kind of pushes outward a bit. So I think if I put a nylock there, it'll actually line up better, but I'll fiddle with that later. That's all of this is based off of the fitment of this up here, so it can be adjusted. I also put on a little holdy handle over here, and what I used were just some rubber shock isolators out of yonder Mercedes over there, because it just did the shocks 2 weeks ago, and that worked out perfectly. I just counter torqued these 2 nylocks into each other and squished that down, and these are the front shocks. I just took the washers off of both and then put 1 isolator in the middle, and that's a nice, good, solid handbrake with a nice rubber grip. Don't know what kind of rubber Mercedes used on those things 37 years ago, but it's good because it's still in pretty good shape, still nice and squishy. So that is all together now. I guess I will go through and tell you everything, all the actual final dimensions and cuts and materials and everything, and throw it up on screen here right now while I gab about it. Okay, so all in all, I used up exactly 80 inches of zinc-plated 12-gauge 1-inch wide flat bar stock. I also used exactly 22 inches of 3/8 coarse threaded rod. It's 14 inches here, give or take, and 8 inches there, give or take. Probably err 15 there and 7 there, make your handle a bit shorter. My handle's a little bit too long, honestly. I also used 10 inches of 1 1/4 inch dowel, 18 inches of 1/4 inch coarse threaded rod, 2 1-inch coarse threaded hex cap bolts. I have 1 1/2 on here, and as you can see, they're way too long. You can go with 1 inch, probably maybe 1 1/4 if you're using 1/8 inch steel. I also used 9 nylock 3/8 coarse nuts. I'm considering this 1 nut down here because I honestly probably need to switch that to a nylock. And I also used just 6 regular 3/8 coarse thread nuts. 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. And the reason why I didn't use a nylock here is because if I do, then you can't spin this off by hand. With this, you get 2 wrenches, back off the torque, and then you can spin both of these off relatively easily by hand. If it was nylock, it would be an absolute pain to change a spool. Then we also have this doohickey, which can be anything. I was just lazy and I just happened to have those isolators lying around, so that's what I used. But you could take a piece of wood and then epoxy a 3/8 nylock nut into the end of it, and just have a piece of rod in there and then back it out, and then that would probably work fine. That's what I would have done, but I just had those and it worked, so I went with that. But that's what I would recommend. I also had 8 1/4-inch course, just regular nuts, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, and 2 there. That could be a nylock, no reason it can't be. I also have 11 3/8 flat washers, 2 there, 2 there, and I stack these up so that so one doesn't say bind on the nut and then bind on the wood. So, there's twice as many bearing surfaces. I have 3 up here, 2 back there, and I don't have any over here. Now, these guys in here, I'm not even quite sure what they are. I think they're 8 and 32, or 8 and 30, whatever the fine thread number 8 is. And there's a corresponding nut on the back, but those honestly could just be brass rivets, which would probably be a lot easier to use, but you can't really get them apart. I can't really get these apart anyway. It's kind of just one and done. If you're a much better woodworker, you can make some much nicer. You could also just wrap the thing in 40 layers of duct tape and just call it a day. I went with wood because I wanted it to look kind of fancy, and then I gave up halfway through, and so it kind of looks haggard anyway. Over here we have a 1/2-inch 1/4-inch bolt and a 3/4-inch 1/4-inch bolt. They could probably both be 1/2-inch, and then this be a nylock. That would probably work much better. Oh, you also need just a standard knife holder, and this is just held on, by the way. I don't think I ever showed that. I just have a tiny machine screw that I just drill an 1/8-inch hole, stuff that through there, and then put a nut on the back. And I mean, you could secure that however you want. I just found that field expedient, so that's what I did. And that's just a generic knife holder. You can probably pick one up from a, thrift store or dollar store, or just off of Amazon for probably $2 or something like that. It's worth, you could figure something out with scrap lying around, but I mean, that's kind of a perfect solution. Or you could just put it on your belt and don't even worry about having it on here. That's another option. This guy right here, this is just a 10 and 32, just, round head screw or machine screw. I think it's only a 1/4-inch long. It's nothing fancy. You can honestly do whatever you want there. I would say if you're doing this and you're trying to minimize number of parts, I would go with another 1/2-inch, 1/4-inch with a nylock nut on it, and then put the nut on the outside. Alright, so as far as the steel cuts go, there are 2 21-inch sections, 2 5-inch sections, 1 11-inch section, 1 4-inch section, and then 1 7-inch section back there, as well as a 2-inch section down here, and another 2-inch section over here. And all told, you add that up, it's probably 78 inches. That's because you lose some material with kerfs, and I know there was a bunch of scrap that I cut off, and that's why I ended up using 80. So I would recommend just buying 2 48-inch pieces of bar stock. That's what I did. Leaves you some leftover in case you mess one of these up. Yeah, you get a second attempt. It's it's worth the extra $2 that you'll have to spend in material. And if you don't waste anything, like I somehow managed not to, you can you just have a 16-inch bar. You can do whatever you want, make a machete out of it or something. As far as tools went, I used the angle grinder heavily. I also very much needed a table vise. I was also using MAP gas. You could probably get away with propane. The steel is actually really soft. It's way more pleasant to work with than 8th inch. I thought I was going to regret getting the 12, but this was so much better. I would really highly recommend the 12 gauge over the 18 or 1/8 inch bar stock. As far as tools, I used a battery powered angle grinder, a battery powered drill. I also used a battery powered orbital sander, but you don't need that. I extensively used a chainsaw file, a flat chainsaw file. A nice fresh file will help you a lot. I used a 3/8, a 9/32, I think, a 3/16, and a 1/8 drill bit. I also used a 10 and 32 tap, a what was it, a 3/8 and whatever coarse thread is tap, a 1/4 inch and whatever coarse thread is tap. Yeah. So this whole setup does need a tap and die. If you can weld, you probably don't need to tap some stuff. You can just weld these nuts, like one of these nuts onto one of these things, like weld this guy to this guy, or that guy in there to this guy, or something like that, and save yourself the effort. But really, I didn't have a lot of specialty tools. I did make heavy use of the angle grinder and of the table vise, as well as I also had a map gas torch. You could probably get away with propane, but if you have any aspirations to do any significant amount of like metal work, or you think or you're getting into like small engine repair or something, I would say definitely make the initial investment into a map gas torch. I've been using propane for years, and it's night and day between the two. Also, I've been using a reciprocating saw with hacksaw blades for years, and I just recently switched over to an angle grinder. It's night and day. And the difference between a reciprocating saw and an angle grinder is like the same. Like, they cost the same amount as an initial investment. And getting blades for a angle grinder, or getting blades for a reciprocating saw, like metal cutting blades, is honestly probably more expensive than getting like cut-off wheels and grinding wheels for an angle grinder. But anywho, back to map gas. It costs like $50 to get like a nice torch to start out with map gas, and then the tanks probably cost about twice as much. But you use like, it takes like a tenth the time, and you use like maybe a fifth the gas. I mean, in the long run, it'll save you. So just word of advice. Really, out of everything in here, the most complicated thing as far as machine work is concerned is like bending these to be exact, these 90 degrees right here, getting them all exact and lined up and perfect. I don't know how I did that first try. Dumb luck, I guess. And then also cutting this groove in here, just knowing when to stop yourself and just having that self-control. I kind of went fast and loose, and it didn't bite me. I ended up nailing that right on the head. And yeah, I was just kind of winging all of this, and I'm honestly surprised how good it came out. And yeah, so there you are. This is the final design I'm going with for now. I'll splice in a clip here at the end if I make some other major change. I don't know if that happened or not, but this is the end of the video now. If you like what I'm doing here, if you want to see more weird, interesting, inventive stuff like this that honestly is probably more work and time than it's actually worth, then yeah, that's kind of my MO. So go down there, like the video, comment, tell me some other interesting problem you have and whether I should look into it, and subscribe if you want to see more. Until next time, I'm out.